Morning, this is Dr. Rutledge, and this is a draft of a presentation I'm working on. It has two important features that we're going to focus on. The most important thing that I think they're both really important. Number one is there's new research just published a few days ago on the problem of fatty liver disease. And fatty liver disease, unfortunately, is a terrible complication that affects 1 in 4 Americans and often leads to liver failure and death. And a recent study published that we'll talk about a little bit showed that if the patients in this study from, I think, the Cleveland Clinic had weight loss surgery, primarily Roux-en-Y gastric bypass, 90% were protected from some of the serious complications of the disease. So this is pretty exciting. And then we're going to talk a little bit about the complications of the weight loss surgery that they reported they didn't focus on because it had so many positive outcomes. And then on top of that, we'll talk about if you don't want to have weight loss surgery, or if you've had weight loss surgery and you want to improve your life even further, you can do it maybe without having to have a Roux-en-Y gastric bypass. So we'll talk a little bit about that. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen to start up on that now. Okay, I've been reminded that we need to keep telling people who listen to this that I'm not your doctor. What I'm going to talk about today are my opinions, and you should talk to your doctor before you do anything like I saw something on the internet and I decided to start taking some medicine or something like that. So warning, this is mostly for your information, and any kind of medical treatment or anything like that, you need to discuss that with your doctor first. So with that, we'll go ahead. So I have some kind of comical references to this. So, okay, I say begin with alert. There's another pandemic. And when you think of the tragic pandemic and the deaths that are happening with COVID, it's worth pointing out that 1 in 4 Americans have fatty liver disease. Now, wait a minute. 1 out of every 4. I mean, how many tragic deaths and complications have we seen from the present COVID epidemic? Well, it's terrible that has happened, but it's not 1 out of every 4 Americans. This is a disease that's affecting 1/4 of our population. And there's no real clear pill or medical treatment for it. The only way to keep it in check is something we'll talk about a little bit later in the presentation. That's lose weight and eat a healthy diet. Well, hello, maybe we should lose weight and eat a healthy diet. Well, I'm not going to kind of bug you too much about it, but let me just say again, lose weight, eat a healthy diet. We'll talk about it. Okay, there's a new study that I'm talking about and led to this preliminary presentation. And it said that patients who had bariatric surgery, in addition to causing weight loss, in other words, bariatric is usually said, oh, it's weight loss, but it also protected the liver. Remember the previous slide. 1 in 4 Americans. Bariatric surgery caused weight loss, but also protected the liver. And remember the previous slide, there's no medical treatment. Now we have a surgical treatment. And of course, we don't want surgery, but I mean, if you need treatment, we have a treatment. The results were, in this New York Times article, striking. Out of a group of 1,000 patients who had an aggressive form of fatty liver. Now they said 1,000. That means about around 500 or 600 in each group. So not all had weight loss surgery, but half had weight loss surgery and the other were matched. And they had an aggressive form of fatty liver disease, more severe. Those who had weight loss surgery, about half, 600 patients who had weight loss surgery, cut their risk of either advanced liver disease, liver cancer, or death by almost 90% over the next 10 years. So how would you like to cut your risk of death by 90%? Or complications, it's not just death. Okay. So for 25 years, I've been arguing that the MGB in bariatric surgery can resolve liver disease. So I recommend here that you can go to our Facebook page and talk to thousands of MGB patients that I've operated on and ask about their liver disease, diabetes, high blood pressure, etc. But what I have seen in my experience is it can resolve fatty liver disease. And note again, this is entertainment purposes only. Don't go suddenly tell your doctor that this is what you have to have, but this is my opinion and my experience. And so I'm reminded of the famous line from Terminator 2, "Come with me if you want to live." So remember, entertainment, but imagine that a quarter of Americans face this disease and we could have a 90% decrease in complications, including death, with weight loss surgery. On the other hand, it was Roux-en-Y, and there are complications with that. So we can talk about those details, maybe in the question and answer section. Okay, remarkable new study shows the benefits of bariatric surgery, but warning, not every surgery and not every patient has a good outcome. The study in JAMA of 1,100 patients with severe fatty liver disease, weight loss surgery cut the risk of advanced liver disease, liver cancer, and related death overall by 90%. Not each one, but the overall. Bariatric surgery in non-alcoholic fatty liver disease and obesity slashed, not sure we should use the word slashed for surgery, liver and cardiovascular risk. This is a quote from a news article on the paper that was published. What is non-alcoholic fatty liver disease? This is a quote from an article that's called "The Worst Disease You've Never Heard of." So non-alcoholic fatty liver disease is basically fatty liver disease not caused by drinking. So in the United States, there's a huge number of people with fatty liver disease, liver failure, and death, but they get it mainly from drinking too much alcohol. So this is people, they are not over drinking alcohol, but they're still getting the same fatty liver disease and dying, but without drinking. So this is not alcoholic fatty liver disease. The fatty liver can swell, or ultimately after it's damaged for so many years, it begins to shrink. The liver cells begin to die and are replaced by scar, and the liver fails to function, and this can lead to cirrhosis and death. So non-alcoholic, not from drinking. There are plenty of people, sadly, that do drink and get fatty liver disease. But even those who don't can get fatty liver disease and die. What are the dangers? Too much fat in the liver. The fat deposited in the liver because of our high fat, high sugar diet causes liver inflammation that damages the liver, that creates scarring, and often progresses to liver failure and death. The liver-related mortality rate is 2 to 5% over 10 years. Complications, morbidity, mortality, what happens when you get fatty liver disease? Well, it's not just the liver, because those people who have non-alcoholic fatty liver disease get heart and vascular disease like stroke, they get kidney disease, they get cancer, and they get type 2 diabetes. So it's not just liver, but when the liver begins to fail, everybody goes down with the ship. Can being overweight or obese cause liver disease? The answer is yes. In fact, obesity causes more fatty liver disease than alcohol drinking. And that's a new event in American health. We didn't used to have this because we didn't used to be obese. Being overweight or obese causes fat to accumulate in the liver, and then that causes deterioration of lots of body functions. So can overweight or obese cause liver? Yes, the worldwide prevalence of obesity among fatty liver disease, NASH patients, is 51 and 81%. So in other words, non-alcoholic and then non-alcoholic steatohepatitis, which is a further stage of this, is a very severe complication. In populations with obesity, that increases to 60 and 95%. Now, why is this happening? Well, we're eating too much, and we're eating too much fat, too much sugar, too much salt, too much highly processed foods. And although this is a little controversial, it's pretty clear meat, dairy, and eggs are all relatively high-fat foods, and so they are on the list of the causes of this complication. And we'll kind of talk about this more. Treatment of non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. It's best treated, in fact, the only treatment that we really know of until this study is lifestyle measures. So here's the standard recommendations from the American Liver Foundation. So weight loss of 7 to 10% may revert the fatty liver. Bariatric surgery should be considered when patients are significantly overweight And they're not usually done for lesser weight patients because the complications of the Roux-en-Y and the sleeve are so much that people tend to hold off unless you're very overweight. Now, the radical new study showed in non-alcoholic fatty liver disease and obesity, bariatric surgery cut 90% of the risk of advanced liver disease, cancer-related death, and this is a new JAMA study, and cardiovascular disease risk was cut by 70%. However, they report the surgical risk was high. 1 out of every 4 Americans has this fatty liver disease. The only way to keep it in check is to lose weight, eat a healthier diet, reports the New York Times. However, this study, bariatric surgery, now opens our eyes to new possibilities. I would point out for 24 years now, I have been offering MGB, a mini gastric bypass created by me back in 1997 for patients with fatty liver disease with superb success. This particular study in JAMA was striking. A group of more than 1,000 patients, as we said, with aggressive form of fatty liver disease. Those who had weight loss surgery cut their risk of advanced liver disease, liver cancer-related death by 90%. Only 5 out of 650 of the bariatric surgery patients developed severe liver complications. So that's pretty exciting compared to 40 of the 500 who did not have the surgery. The weight loss surgery patients were also significantly lower risk of cardiovascular disease, 70% less likely to experience a cardiac heart attack, stroke, or heart failure, or to die of heart disease. That's pretty exciting. So this is from the author. Obesity is the main driver of fatty liver disease. It all starts with obesity, he said. Excessive fat accumulates in the liver. Fatty cells cause fatty liver. This leads to worsening inflammation, further liver damage, and then scar tissue forms, often leading to cirrhosis, an end-stage form of scar tissue. When patient loses weight, the fat is absorbed from all parts of the liver, including the liver, and the inflammation begins to go away, as some of the scar tissue then can be removed. Weight loss is definitely the main curative factor. Dr. Stephen Nissen, the chief academic officer of the Heart and Vascular Institute of the Cleveland Clinic, called the results remarkable. Post-surgical disease result was the lowest I've seen in 30 years doing studies on this disease, and an 88% reduction to advanced liver disease, he said in his quote. The findings add to mounting evidence that bariatric surgery can provide health benefits beyond weight loss, and 100 million Americans are dangerously overweight, and 250,000 undergo bariatric operations each year. So this is a big and important topic for all of us. Now, what about the American Liver Foundation? Bariatric surgery is great, and maybe lots of people, maybe more people should have it, but what if you don't want to have weight loss surgery? Or what if you do have weight loss surgery and you still are not perfectly thin and healthy? Well, according to the American Liver Foundation, this is what you should do. And number one is lose weight, and we'll talk a little bit about that. The number one way to do that is not some crazy diet, but eating a healthy diet. Basically limiting the amount of salt and sugar in your diet, exercising more, controlling diabetes, keeping your cholesterol down to protect your liver. And we'll go into this a little bit more before we finish up. So eat a healthy diet. According to the American Liver Foundation, how do we lose weight? Eat a healthy diet, limit salt and sugar, exercise more. Well, how do we do that? Well, we reduce calories. And eating a healthy diet, they recommend, and I recommend, high in fruits and vegetables, high in fruits and vegetables, whole grains, and low in saturated fat. Saturated fat, you can translate. Every time you hear the word saturated fat, in your mind, you should say meat, dairy, eggs. Okay, so I'm not going to say saturated fat. I'm going to say it's really simple. Meat, dairy, and eggs. Where does saturated fat come from? Meat, dairy, and eggs. So eat less meat, dairy, and eggs. You can go to 0. You don't have to, but you want to live, you want to be healthy, you want to cure your liver, less meat, dairy, and eggs. And here we see in the American Liver Foundation, limit animal-based foods like red meat. Eat more plant-based foods like beans, legumes, nuts, seeds, things like that. So more like a healthy, what we call plant-based, or you could call it vegetarian or vegan diet. But those can be problematic because you could have a vegan diet, of cotton candy and candy bars. So that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about fresh, whole foods in general. Also, not all weight loss surgeons or surgery is the same. What we mean by this is that the Roux-en-Y gastric bypass carried serious risks. 62 of the 650 patients in the study developed serious complications from their operation, and 4 died within the first year of having their Roux-en-Y gastric bypass. One of the findings of the mini gastric bypass by the now hundreds of studies done by other surgeons is that the MGB is shorter to perform, lower complication rates, more powerful generally in weight loss. And so again, the Roux-en-Y in this study was effective, but maybe we can do better because it did have a 10% complication rate and 4 dying in just the first year after surgery. So I would say the America and the world are being poisoned with increased obesity, illness, and death coming from this poisoning. The standard American diet is one of the prime drivers of this epidemic. What we need to do is eat fewer calories, less protein or less methionine and branched chain amino acids improves outcome. This can easily be done by eating less meat, dairy, and eggs, and more fresh fruits and vegetables. And I have a whole separate talk on this particular topic. It's a little bit deep for this explanation, but in general, eat less meat, dairy, and eggs, more fresh fruits and vegetables. That'll get you a long way towards eating more healthy. Most people are frightened about eating less meat for a variety of reasons that are not supported by science. So one group of people are saying, oh my goodness, if I eat as a vegetarian, I'll get less protein. And this is a slide which has a lot in it, but basically this is a study of Californians who are members of the Seventh-day Adventists, and basically the total protein eaten by non-vegetarians, semi-vegetarians, pesco-vegetarians, that is they eat some fish, lacto-ovo, they eat some dairy and eggs, and pure vegans or strict vegetarians all ate about the same amount of protein. So there's this fear, oh my goodness, if I don't eat meat, I won't get enough protein, and that's wrong. And we could go into that in more detail, but in short, when you switch to a reasonably intelligent, healthy vegetable or plant-based type diet, you're going to get plenty of protein. And what you do is you just get less meat protein and more of your protein from vegetables. It's just not that complicated. You might say, oh, I want to build muscle. I want to get strong. I want to be a he-man or a he-woman. Well, it turns out that meat people versus not people was not meat people showed that in a study, they gave some people a meat-based diet or animal protein diet and the other a vegetarian diet, basically similar. And what they found is the effect of the plant-based versus the meat protein diet on resistance training, that is weightlifting. Both groups showed muscle mass increase with no group differences. They concluded a high protein plant-based diet is not any different than a meat protein match supporting muscle strength and mass, that is the size of your muscles. No difference, another misunderstanding. Meat people versus non-people are not missing something. The conclusion from a large-scale review just published of the literature is that with usual mixed plant protein, you don't just eat one thing. There's therefore not surprising that there's no evidence of protein deficiency in vegetarian populations in Western countries. In other words, hundreds of studies have looked at it. If you don't eat meat or eat very little meat, you do fine. In fact, you do better. The data adult vegetarians indicate the usual vegetarian diets supply more than adequate protein and amino acids, and that's in a 2019 study. So again, I'm excited to present this beginning presentation. This is just a draft, but it brings up a couple of important points. Number one, fatty liver, which is a growing disease, very common in the United States and potentially deadly, can be reversed or prevented by bariatric surgery, and that's exciting. Some bariatric surgery is more complicated, more likely to fail, and more deadly than others. And we think the MGB is one of the good choices. It turns out also that there are lots of things you can do in your daily life today. Eat healthier. eat healthier to be better. Mostly, if you could do one thing or two things, stop eating junk food, salt, sugar, fat, and stop eating meat, dairy, and eggs, or cut back. It's not that complicated. And my hope is that you can all get better. Thanks for stopping by. See you soon.